welcome to our talk, Red Team Oops, which is truly supposed to be a really light, fun, entertaining talk. And then we have a tiny little surprise at the end. We're doing a small tool release at the end, which hopefully might be useful for somebody doing offensive security in the crowd. Yeah, I guess we'll just start off by introducing ourselves.
Awesome. So, hi everybody. My name is Oddvar Mo. I work for a company in the US called TrustedSec. My role there is a red teamer, and I've been doing that for the last almost 6 years now. And it's a lot of fun. Like, I do a lot of fun stuff. So if you've heard my name before, it's probably because of the LOLBAS project. That's probably the thing I've contributed to that has made the biggest impact. I'm also Microsoft Security MVP. I work out of Norway. I love bad dad jokes and dry humor. So yeah, that's me.
My name is Melvin and Langvik. I go by the alias Langvik online. I do really shitty streams. I produce some YouTube content. I go around and hold presentations like this. And I work for Covert. I used to work with Oddvar at TrustedSec. The dad jokes really got to me, so I had to quit. It was bad. Depression sucks. No, it was a joke, obviously, but yeah.
It's not.
So our relation, I'll just move into the next slide here. Our relation is that me and Oddvar used to be co-workers, so we worked together for many years now.
Yeah.
And you know, while working together, we performed what's called red team operations, or what we refer to internally at TrustedSec as adversarial attack simulations, AAS. I'm assuming sort of everybody knows what the red team mission is, but just to give a short overview so everybody is familiar with that term, it's targeted security testing over typically a lengthier period of time, like 6 weeks plus, where attackers like me and Oddvar try to breach a perimeter of your organization and reach a goal. So the goal might be to get access to a server, might be to get access to some sort of piece of information or compromise an account, whatnot. And that's sort of where this whole talk revolves around these operations that we performed. So typical war stories, which are just people bragging about what cool stuff they did during engagements, they have a positive note, meaning that we did this, we were successful, we owned, we got out, we didn't get detected, whatnot. This talk is not that. This talk is about all the times we fucked up. So this is the talk where we basically show our weak spots. We're really vulnerable up here, talking about all the times we made mistakes, because you know what, we make big fat mistakes sometimes as well, and I think it's interesting to talk about them so we all can learn from them. Mistakes. I was a mistake.
Quitting was a mistake.
Oh wow, microphone is on there. Okay, so we're going to talk about all the lessons learned during these mistakes and all the TTPs found. So typically at the end of these mistakes, we want to try to turn it into something positive. Maybe we found some interesting research in our struggles. Maybe we stumbled into something that made it worthwhile, right? So going in, not all the stories we'll be talking about today are, will end with a TTP, but at least the last one will end with a TTP and a tool release for you guys. It's a tiny one, so don't get all too excited, but it's fun nonetheless.
And also remember that these stories are kind of old as well.
Yes. Yes, these are, for security reasons or NDAs, whatnot, jail. We don't want to talk about what we did last year, so these are like a couple of years old, but they're still relevant, not ancient or anything like that. I also want to say that the dynamic here is that we're going to go back and forth telling stories, and then, yeah, we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's entertaining. So, Oddvar, why don't you kick it off?
Oh,
lean back and enjoy story time, guys.
All right, so we had a lot of help from AI. I can't use real images, but that is me, the one with the hoodie in the business suit. So this story begins, I had a kickoff call with a client, and this client had done a lot of investment in training the users for phishing. So he wanted me to actually do as much phishing as possible. So like our normal typical red team assignments are that we try to get in like the first half of the engagement. If we are not succeeding in that, either doing externally exploiting or phishing, we tend to kind of suggest that we pivot to an assumed breach. Like they detonate a payload, we get access, and we work from there. Because it's the best use of time. We don't want to waste any much time. But this customer, all he was talking about was phishing during the entire kickoff call. So apparently he didn't want to do assumed breach. That was not on the table. So he said, either you get in externally, preferably by phishing, or that's it. That's your engagement. Like, that's what you're supposed to do on this engagement. And while he was talking about fish, all I could see in my head was this, for some reason. I was like, fish. Yeah, so, okay, the engagement starts. Please remember, this was a while back. This was, I mean, I worked for 6 years now. This was probably within my first year. I wasn't really advanced at this point. I created a macro. The pretext was that we sent out a phishing pretext where there was new security policies in place. So the user had to comply to these policies. So in order to comply, they had to open my Word document, which had like a copied UAL copyright text, something that made no sense, but it looked like a policy. It had 2 buttons, agree or disagree. But the trick I did was that I disabled the buttons, and in order for them to work, they had to enable the macros for them to be clickable. And I wrote that in the pretext as well. I mean, I felt it was pretty clever, kind of fun. So sent that away to like 10, 15 users. I targeted like employees that hadn't worked there for a long time, like people that just started like within the last year, because normally they would like fall for things like this because they want to be compliant, they want to be doing everything correctly. So sent that away, and I got a shell. Like I got like a notification on my phone, and I was super excited. I mean, remember this was early on in my career, and I was like, yeah, I'm awesome. I'm the best in the world. You know the feeling. So yeah, I got shell from 2 users, and I was so excited. In my monitor was turned the wrong way apparently. I kind of forgot to turn it around. Go figure. But looking closely into like the usernames and stuff, I noticed, well, after turning my screen, of course, I noticed that it was Joe and user. And yeah, for those that are familiar with sending out fishes, if you end up in a sandbox or something similar, when they detonate the payload, you will often see the user Joe or the name user or admin or stuff like that. So, of course, I understood that, okay, this was a sandbox. God damn it. So I didn't feel so cool after that, but okay, let's do another fish. This time, this was before I knew about Evil Jinx. So basically, have I had known of Evil Jinx, then I would probably use that. Goodbye. But I decided to clone just the login page. I bought, or we had like a domain that looked similar to Microsoft's. And the pretext was just that the coworker had shared a document with you. You need to click here to view it. I can't explain exactly the details in the pretext, but it was like something that would make them click. That looked pretty interesting. They clicked, and when they clicked, they would go to this portal. They will enter username and password, and yeah, Bob's your uncle. Again, I got credentials. Damn, I did okay. This time, this is for real. I'm gonna log into the cloud or the VPN. I'm gonna pawn them properly. But apparently, it got reported to the blue team, and they decided to have fun with me. So that's what I got. Yeah, lucky me, huh? So did a crying face again. Again, working a lot of late hours, getting tired, getting exhausted from all this fishing. Did I fish once more? A new pretext, and this pretext I don't even want to talk about because it was so dumb written. It didn't work. It was made fun of by the blue team again. And also another failed fish. And at this point in time, I'm super exhausted. I mean, I used all my creativity, and my rage is just through the roof. I mean, I'm so mad. Like, this is not for me. Maybe I should change career. Maybe I should start farming, ride a tractor, do something else. I mean, maybe I'm not cut out for this red team stuff. Maybe I'm stupid. I'm probably stupid. I can't fish even. So I decided to go, and now we're moving into like the last week. So like I've been fishing like 5-6 weeks in a row, and I'm like super exhausted. So last fish, I decided to go for something I really didn't think would work. But I created like a HDA kind of payload that would fire a survey and sent it from a domain that looked like typical like SurveyMonkey kind of domain thing. And this time I didn't care to even look at what users I was targeting. I basically just picked 10 people at random. I didn't even care, to be honest. I was so tired and I didn't have any hopes for this. Sent it away, and to my big surprise, I actually got a shell this time. Like for real, I got a shell. And just imagine the feeling. So good. I even told my wife. I did it. So good job. And I did what you always do, establish persistence. Because if the user reboots the computer, I will lose access. And I don't want that. I want to regain access if I lose access. Did some screenshots, had a lot of fun, enjoyed myself, downloaded some files, explored the configuration. And then I decided, you know what? I worked my ass off. I'm taking an early evening. And remember, I'm located in Norway, so like I've been working US hours for like 5-6 weeks in a row. So at this time, like my wife haven't seen me other than for dinner, like for like a month. And I wanted to impress. So, okay. Did everything. And this was like on I think it was like on Tuesday. So I took an early evening. Next day, I waited for the shell to call back. As you do. I decided to just do some reporting while I was waiting, looking at some research while I was waiting, because, you know, the user might be late for work or something. No, the user wasn't showing up. Okay, I was thinking, okay, maybe I did something wrong with the payload, the persistence or whatever. No, everything seems correct, okay. Okay, maybe she had a day off. That happens, I mean, it happens. It's unlikely, but it happens, especially on a Wednesday. Or maybe the kid got sick, I don't know. So I decided to wait until Thursday. Thursday comes around, and no shell. And I was like, come on. So I started to look at stuff. Like for instance, I looked at all the files I downloaded, and then I thought to myself, maybe I should check out the survey. What did she actually write in the survey? I'll let you guys read it. Yeah.
Oddvar.
That's red team life.
Oddvar, I thought we weren't supposed to leak my survey. That's mean.
Oh, it was you?
Yeah, it was my survey.
So you're Karen.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, so my feelings explained in a GIF. Okay, so while I was writing the report after this complete failure, I started to think how I failed so many times. And at this stage, I was like, there must be a better way to do this. And I started to get creative. I must admit, I was pretty proud of myself. I'm not sure if you had this, but you wake up with this brilliant idea all of a sudden. I had one of those moments. And prior to working at TrustedSec, I worked as an infrastructure consultant. So I'd done a lot of like Microsoft stuff. And I got a super idea. I actually got an idea. So the idea was that I could use Azure information protection going forward. This is nothing new now, but back in the day, it was like something nobody has done before. So what it does with Azure information protection, since everybody's in the cloud now, this is super easy to use, and you can like encrypt a document or an email to a specific user, and only that user at the organization can open that attachment. So imagine the pain for a blue teamer trying to figure this one out, because they actually have to take the password for that user and log in as that user into the inbox and pull out the payload. So I was super excited about finding out this, and all of this came from having failed like 5-6 times on this engagement. If you're interested in learning more about this, there's like a blog post at TrustedSec. There's also a talk at DerbyCon that we did about this topic. But I thought it was pretty cool at the time. So what did we learn? Persistency pays off, kinda. I got a shell, but it was the kind of wrong shell or the wrong person. And when you are targeting, make sure to check like their profile and stuff, and maybe they're going to work somewhere else. It's worth to check just their LinkedIn or other things. And when you meet a lot of resistance and you fail over and over and over and over and over again, I at least get very creative in terms of finding out new stuff. Okay, that was my first story. Do you want to take it, Melvin?
Thank you, Oddvar. So unlike Oddvar, you know, I'm super young.
I'm a dinosaur, by the way.
People asked me why I brought my dinosaur to CFCon, and it was really weird. I'm kidding, of course. So let's talk about my first time. Obviously, I'm referring to the first time I did a red team operation. I remember this specifically because I was given the absolute opportunity to join Oddvar's team. All I had to do was to do this red team gig and prove myself and, you know, deliver a kick-ass report and showcase why I'm worthy of joining these great guys.
Didn't you also wash my car for a month?
Oddvar, sometimes, you know, it's not...
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
not the time.
yeah, well, yes, I did. But I was able to join the team and it was great. So this is my first red team gig and I had plans. Oh Lord, did I have plans for what I wanted to do. So I'll talk you through the initial payload that I wanted to do against this customer. This was more of a typical red team where you have a portion of the red team to OSINT, you have a portion of the red team for social engineering, and then you pivot into Assume Bridge in order to save time if the client allows for that. So this was supposed to be my magical payload, to walk through that, it's as dumb as an Excel macro, dropping a malicious DLL, which is triggering a DLL sideloading attack in Teams. This was very common at the time, and it has since been very common. I think it's dead now with the new version of Teams, but yeah, so this was the attack. The nice thing about this attack is that I'm not running some weird PowerShell stager, I'm not triggering some script block, I'm dropping a file, and then I'm launching an already existing binary on the machine that is digitally designed by Microsoft, and everything is hunky-dory. So that was the plan. I started to learn Photoshop and CSS. So this is the email that I'm sending the client. I pretended to be what was called the Microsoft Information Protection at the time, which is not the same as the email protection, but the same as I think it was an extension to the Office 365 suite at the time. And I pretended to be that, and I told a bunch of employees that, hey, you need to click this big fat start enrollment button in order to install this plugin, or else you will be unable to use Office. If you click that button, I used the URI scheme to automatically open an Excel document from an URL. That Excel document, I spent a lot of time in Photoshop making this. If you look at the details even, I modified the protected view and security warning text so it looked more accurate, even though it didn't match what was originally up there. But tried to make it look really good, used the target's logo and colors and whatnot. It was great.
Did you blur out the images of yourself there, or what is that?
Well, me? I'm just kidding. Okay, so, and I sent it, right? I've done my testing, I got my payload, it's all good, I sent it. I got shells, but I got a bit too many shells, and the weird thing was that they were all from the same machine, and this wasn't a sandbox, this was a legitimate user. And well, the story goes, if you open Task Manager and you look at Teams, you see this. And that is not me, it's me failing, but that is because Teams is a bunch of smaller applications running just like Chrome or modern browsers, right? And I didn't have anything to stop that. I didn't have a process mutex like I should have had on that thread, right? So it just kept spawning. Every time somebody downloaded a document, I would get 20 shells back over a short period of time from that machine. Now that was great, right? You can't get too much initial access. It's not, what could possibly, you know, what else could have gone wrong here? I got a bunch of shells, right? It's not stealthy, it's dumb, but I got a bunch of shells. Well, Melvin wanted to be really clever when he created this config. At the time, we were using Cobalt Strike, and in the config for this payload, I thought, you know what? Let's be really stealthy. Let's only call back once every 2 hours. That's clever, or 4 hours. So I had put the sleep to 14 million milliseconds. And let me just tell you straight away, a Teams process doesn't stay open for 14 million milliseconds. They launch and die all the time. So I will get the shell unable to queue a task. It would die. It would be like a constant circle of temptation. Initial access, nope. Initial access, nope. Initial access, nope. It was horrible.
It's the ultimate teaser.
Yes, it is. And this was my first gig. I was supposed to impress someone.
You did. New record.
And so I started thinking, how am I going to remedy this situation? So I looked at the documentation for Cobalt Strike, and I looked at these event hooks, which you can create up in an aggressor script, and then these can be triggered when the beacon checks in or the initial callback for the beacon. The issue with all of these is that they still won't queue the task until the task won't be accepted by the beacon before the next return, and by the next return the team's process would be dead. So the end of story for this one is that I ended up changing, luckily for me, the Excel macro that I deployed fetched the DLL from a remote resource. So I quickly replaced that DLL with a DLL that didn't sleep for 14 million milliseconds, and that did have a process mutex in order to prevent millions of tens of 20s of callbacks. And that worked, and luckily somebody else clicked the Excel document, and I definitely never got that initial access I wanted on the first few machines, but a lot of people clicked, and that saved me. And let's just say I didn't call this out in the report. I didn't mention this specifically, other than that we had compromised an extra machine very briefly.
We talk about that in chat all the time.
Yes, this is a story that comes up. So what did we learn from this? Well, always check your payload configuration before hitting send. This sounds dumb. It is dumb. I'm dumb, but just do it, okay? Also, replicating and playing out the initial access scenario in the lab probably is always going to pay off. After this, I have gone to extra lengths getting information from the client in order to properly replicate the environment. During most engagements, you want to key your payload. You want to make sure it's unable to execute outside of the environment of the customer. So if you can't identify some sort of factor from the internal network during the information gathering section, I'll just ask the client, what is your internal domain name? Great. I'll key that and make sure the payload doesn't run off somewhere. And I'll also make sure I can recreate the lab environment according to the internal environment of the user. Also, you can actually get too much initial access. There is such a thing, and for me, it didn't really help me in that situation. Yes, but that's the failure for this story.
Awesome. Yeah. So new engagement. We go a couple years forward in my career. I have kind of leveled up my tradecraft a little bit. Having this kickoff call with this client, just look at his face. I mean, this is like a unicorn customer. One of those customers that know they have like a great security posture, and they're like, you're never hacking me, you're never getting in, you know, the type. And to be honest, that rages me so madly when I get those customers. It's a nice customer though, it's nothing bad there, but look at the grin on his face. I had to watch this, and he was like, you can try whatever you want, doesn't matter, you're not getting in, you're not getting, like the goal here was like, try to escalate to something. That was the initial goal. And yeah, it's kind of a fun scenario for me because it challenges me when you know you're up against a client that takes security like seriously. So started off doing like the external stuff. I basically didn't find anything. It was like nothing. Like there was like a couple of servers, did some password spraying. Later I learned that they had like, I don't know, 16 characters password or whatever. It was like ridiculous. I did find like, I think there was 1 or 2 critical SSL3 findings. Oh yeah, we're talking real stuff here. So that was basically it for the external part. I was able to enumerate users and stuff. I did find some stuff during OSINT, but not a whole much. So yeah, but to my big surprise, I was actually able to successfully phish this time on the first attempt. And this was a pretext I had fine-tuned for a couple of engagements. I was pretty confident with this, and it also uses like an internal payload that I have developed together with my own C2 framework that we use internally. By the way, it will be released later this year. So I was kind of happy at this point. I mean, I landed a shell at the customer that was like, you're never getting in. And to me, that was like a big victory. But of course, we all know that is not the goal. The goal is not to get in. The goal is to get dominate the customer, to be honest, and reach the goals. So again, his face, starting off internally from the shell I had. I tried like looking for re-credentials, but I pulled like the password policy. Kind of noticed that it was like, I think it was 16 chars if I remember correctly. So I'm like, okay, this is not going to work. I'm not going to find any credentials by doing password spraying for winter 2021 or whatever. It's not going to work. I did look for local escalations, all the typical stuff, like services, misconfigured tasks, stuff like that. All the typical things. Like I went through with like a microscope. And also remember, all these things didn't happen like in a day. I'm stealthy here, so it happens over the course of a couple of weeks. Looking at Active Directory more in depth, there were no SPNs to curb roast. Boo-hoo. And also, I'm pretty sure if I did, the password would be ridiculous because they had like this insane password policy. Looking through all the file shares in the company, I didn't find a single credential. Not one. Normally, that's something you always find. No default credentials. I tried like all the portals I could find. Like if there was like a Cisco box or whatever, I basically tried all the portals I could find. No default credentials. I tried printers, tried Tomcat. I tried like all the things in the book. Coercing? No. They had like, I think they had like partially installed the Microsoft baseline, like the hardening thing for clients. So like a lot of services was disabled. I was like, it was a nightmare for me. I was not getting anywhere. Did Bloodhound, didn't get anything. Certs, well, there was actually two templates that was vulnerable for ESC1. So that was interesting. But of course, you needed domain computers, and at this point in my engagement, I was a user, so it was kind of unusable to me. So I was stuck at the initial foothold, and it was awful. It was horrible. I felt like a failure. And the only thing I noticed is this domain was established in like 2001. Yeah, I'm that old. I remember even those days. I mean, I started my career like early 2000, so I've been through this, like all the changes from NT4 to Active Directory and all that stuff. So losing a lot of sleep on this, like you do when you're filled with rage, I started to dream of this guy. And basically, and this is an honest thing, I actually woke up and I was like angry because I was not getting anywhere. It was getting to me. Oh man, even the family was kind of noticing my mood was changing and stuff. So, having a background from like being an IT pro, I came up with just a crazy idea. I made a hypothesis, since this was an old domain, maybe I could abuse the fact that, like back in the days when we used remote installation services, we normally pre-staged computers, but we also knew a little hack where if you check the box for pre-2000K computer, it will actually set the password to the computer account the same as the machine account. So that got me thinking, and I looked up some old documentation. I had to use Wayback Machine to find this. This is an old article, and it states there in the blue that if you assign the checkbox, basically this, it will set the password the same as the computer name. Did you guys know this? Some knew it, okay. So that was my hypothesis. I mean, at this point, I had nothing to lose. I was like the last stretch of the engagement, was not getting anywhere. So I searched for old computers, and I did this in my lab first. So I found that if you search for password not required in the user account control, along with workstation trust account, 4128, and also that the account never had been logged on before, it meant that it was a potential account we could abuse. So I found in a list of like 80 or 90 computer accounts that fulfilled those requirements, I found that there were actually 2 of those that had the same username as the password. So there was a thing here, it's mentioned in a blog post I've written, but I had to change the password for the computer account that was not in use. It was just created like a long time ago. I wrote some custom tooling, that's part of the packet now, to change the password. And of course, yeah, requested a certificate, did a full compromise without detection. And guess who dreamt of who that following night? Yeah, you're right. That was my story. So this was just like something that fueled research. I failed so miserably trying to get anywhere, and it kind of brought up old memories from my early days. And it became this blog post diving into pre-created computer accounts. And Garrett Foster created a tool as well based on this called Pre2K. So yeah, that is it. And what did we learn? Never give up, just try harder until you lose sleep. That's an important factor. And rage, at least for me, fuels creative research ideas. And also legacy knowledge, even though you're a dinosaur, can be useful sometimes.
Thank you, Oddvar.
Thanks.
Okay, so this is the last story, and we also have a quick tool demo in this one. So I had a meeting with the client, a kickoff call, typically what's referred to, where we discussed the definitions of the engagement and technical details and whatnot. And this client was very specific in that they wanted us to phish with QR codes. And I see a lot of people scanning the QR code. I do that. Do that. And this is really weird. And it, fooled my spidey senses immediately. Why is this client being very specific about the techniques being used? Yes, it happens sometimes, but most of the time, the client is more specific in about what they want to achieve during engagement, what values, what goal we want to reach, and not necessarily what techniques they want specifically tested. So, I took the bait and I started doing QR code phishing. And it was a nightmare. My emails never got through. If some of them got through, it got immediately reported and detected. It was obvious that this client had definitely done their research and specifically asked me to do phishing using QR codes in order to make me look like a fool, or at least get a good stamp on that test.
And you forgot to turn the screen around.
Yes, I also forgot to turn the screen on this one. I'm a dum-dum. Okay, so that started my creative thinking process. Okay, let's do some really basic research and let's just do Google, okay? How do these companies detect QR codes in phishing emails? And I found this rather interesting blog post by a guy called Liam Jones from Stripe. And he has this query that I'm assuming he probably uses with Microsoft Sentinel, depending how much money he wants to give to Microsoft every month. It's a basic query to pull out all potentially untrusted emails coming inbound that has an image attached. Now, there's a couple of mistakes in this one. The big one being that there's way more image types than PNG, JPEG, and SVG. GIF, bump map, TIFF, whatever. And the other one being the assumption of it being an image, right? Now, everybody's here probably screaming inside, oh, ASCII art, I've seen that, QR codes with ASCII art, that's never been done before. It's definitely been done before, and it looks like shit. Looks like this. I get that you're trying to fool people, but come on. Looks like a game more than a QR code. And not only that, but certain individuals has definitely made sure it's a known thing by now. That's not a stab at John Hammond, but just trying to prove the point. I think many people know about the fact that you can create QR codes using fancy ASCII letters. So I had to dig deeper. I had to look past the initial vector here. How can I try to deliver these QR codes? And I found this CodePen post on QR codes based on CSS. This is essentially just divs with classes. The classes defines a series of box shadows that creates QR codes in pure CSS. And that's not dumb, right? So obviously, I spent a ridiculous amount of time recreating this in a Python script in order to automatically generate QR codes in pure CSS that would work, right? Gold medal for me. No gold medal for me, because Outlook, which is the email engine I'm targeting, doesn't support this sort of CSS styling, right? If you have ever designed an email in Outlook, you know how sassy Outlook can be when it comes to doing email styling, right? It's ridiculous. So, if only there were some other way to structure like a format or something that would look like a QR code. If only I could do that. Yes, so it turns out Outlook supports tables, and tables are defined like this, and you can turn them into QR codes. That's what I did. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, right? So I created this tool that I'll demo for you guys right now called Crucible that generates QR codes both in CSS and using tables straight out in an EML format that you can fish with. And this is sort of a teaser because this tool is very lightweight right now, and I have much more to add to it, but I'm talking more about that at a later conference in August. So this is like a tiny release, yeah, I'll try to do a live demo on it because presentation isn't complete without fuck-ups. Yeah. Okay. It's been a hot minute. Let's see here. Okay. It's really dumb. So it asks for URL to encode into the QR code. You can set a size. You can also give it an input HTML template, and it will replace the string QR placeholder with the QR code. You can choose if you want the QR code to be generated in CSS or with tables. The fun thing is that most other email rendering engines supports the CSS version. Like in Gmail, the QR code will show just fine with pure CSS. But for Outlook, so you want to stick with tables. And then you also have the option to output a straight EML format instead of an HTML format. So I'll use my history here. And I'll generate URL, a QR code for CFCon, give me the EML format, use tables, and then I have a template that looks pretty decent. I'll click enter, generate that, and I'll open up my Parallels desktop here, and I'll show you what that looks like. So that QR code is purely tables, and it doesn't look like shit. Yeah, come on, come on. Now, this concept is super trivial. This is not rocket science, but it's simple, and for me, in my engagement, this was very effective. So I ended up feeling a bit more like this. I'm just going to play that in case you haven't seen it. This is the client asking me to fish with QR codes.
Are you the old guy, Melvin?
Yes, I'm the old guy in this scenario. Thank you for pointing that out. Obviously, I'm like, you sure you want me to fish with QR codes? Come on. I'm like, okay, if you want it. Oh, that never gets old. Okay. Takeaways from this quick story. Basic research on potential detection likely pays off. I'm a huge fan of KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. The less complicated stuff is, the better. Project can be found at this QR code. It's at GitHub. And I have made fire, hopefully. And I think that's it. Thank you so much for
having
us, CFCon.